It's becoming abundantly clear what Black Ops 4 game updates are to Activision. A Trojan horse. Yes, they have continued their terrible behavior, this time showing potential development weaknesses, cashing in on nostalgia, and opening up the potential for even more bad stuff. Yeah, it's pretty hard to believe that even they are doing this. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. Well, a new Black Ops 4 update has arrived, well, on the PS4 anyway, because of Activision and Sony's deal, and once again this gives us a window into what Activision are doing, the experiments that they are running, and what's seemingly clear to me overall is that Call of Duty is Activision's Fief. It's their one, cash cow franchise. What do I mean? Well, EA have always had FIFA to fall back on, and Ultimate Team is continuing to rake in money for them. Why? Well, FIFA, being a football game, ended up being a really strong format for loot boxes, dressed up in a way that consumers would understand. Football trading cards. I'm not sure how identical they are to, say, baseball cards in America, but it's maybe something like that. But when I was younger anyway, people were going mad, kids, over football cards. Now, that meant that EA's main franchise had a built-in loot box mechanic. It's totally reprehensible in its pay-to-win nature, but what is clear is that the physical abstraction of collectible cards has helped its audience accept the microtransactions and made a lot of money for EA. But here's the problem with Activision. There is no such parallel for the Call of Duty franchise. There's no easy way to pull the wool over people's eyes like EA have been able to do with FIFA, yet they still want that recurring revenue. This has led them down an increasingly dark path with the Call of Duty series, with Black Ops 4 being truly absurd, having layers upon layers of monetization to the point where it is going far beyond what most free-to-play games would do. Now, as I just alluded to, with no clear aesthetic to wrap its microtransactions in, such as the card-collecting fantasy football of FIFA, they are just left seemingly ever more desperate, trying to squeeze their audience harder. We've documented this since the beginning of this channel's existence, actually, and sadly for Call of Duty players, the latest update is no change. Now, before this, the latest controversy was that the game added new weapons, including the fan-favorite ballistic knife. Sounds good, right? Well, it wasn't. Normally in a Call of Duty game, you rank up and you unlock your weapons by just getting XP, but not this time. The guns were put into reserves, i.e. the game's loot boxes. Now, these loot boxes have been mad. Until recently, they didn't really have any dupe protection of any worth. This meant that players had a really hard grind and had to be very lucky to earn the new guns through loot boxes, through gameplay, or I suppose could just, well, buy more loot boxes. Now, this was somewhat improved with the addition of contracts and bad luck protection, but neither are ideal. Contracts don't unlock the new weapons, they typically just give you XP or another reserve crate, and the bad luck protection is in the form of you turning 6 standard crates in for a crate that will give you 3 items that won't be dupes. Now, that may sound good, but you've got to realize how massively inflated the game's loot table is. You see, in Black Ops 4, guns, skins, charms, and other effects aren't unlocked for all weapons. They're on a per-gun basis, meaning that if a new charm is added to the game, instead of unlocking the charm and just having that as a customization option for all of your weapons, no, you've got to unlock that charm for every single weapon individually. Now, to get a better handle on what that means, we're going to take a look at the problematic new loot additions that have arrived for Operation Apocalypse Z, the game's new sort of event and season. They added 3 camos across 27 guns, 1 death effect across 25 guns, and 54 charms. That's a total of 160 junk items. As for the quality items, well, they include a Mastercraft weapon, 3 Mark II weapons, 2 emotes, a blackout character, and 9 outfits, but to call some of those outfits new is a bit of a stretch. They also added in 2 new weapons, a crossbow and the Argus shotgun for 178 items, but a terrible ratio of quality items to junk, one that is made even worse when you consider they're all cosmetic, bar 2 gameplay impacting ones. And what's worse is that these crates, these reserve crates, contain all previous operation loot and all previous contraband tier loot. Now, as of Spectre Rising, the last operation, you were looking at over 800 items in the potential loot pool. That's now essentially 1,000 items. Now, sure, dedicated players will have many of those by now, but it's still very hard to defend a loot pool that is so inflated, especially when most of it is junk items like with the stickers and the per gun charm unlocks. Now, this is actually made even more clear when we move further. So you get a new contraband track with 40 levels, or tiers, right? Now you unlock a Mastercraft weapon at level 20, and then an Ultra Weapon Bribe at level 40. Now, last time, you unlocked a new weapon. This time, it's a Weapon Bribe, which is just a special weapon loot box. They just can't stop. Now, this loot box, this special bribe, this will give you a non-dupe weapon from the reserve pool. So that does include all past weapons from DLC, again meaning that it is actually quite watered down. Now, the value of this is entirely predicated on how the overall loot pool is so diluted, so you really can just see their plans so clearly. And what's even worse is they're also selling a bundle in the store now that gives you a specialist skin and also one of these ultra weapon bribes. So that's literally them selling you a gun containing loot box that will probably have a gameplay impacting weapon in it. So overall, it's utter madness. And while the price of that bundle is a bit mad if you just want the weapon, it's a specific instance of, yeah, them selling power for dollars. So it's looking quite bad, but when you take things in context, it actually gets worse. The crossbow, that's been a staple of the Black Ops games. There's a lot of nostalgia with the crossbow, so they're clearly putting it in the loot boxes with that nostalgia in mind. What have they also done? Well, they've brought back the Sticks and Stones game mode, which involves, of course, the ballistic knife and the crossbow, which are both loot box only items. That's another fan favorite game mode from Black Ops 1 that has essentially been brought back in order to play in people's emotional connections to the franchise's past in order to increase the loot box participation rate. You need only ask yourself this: why not unlock the ballistic knife and the crossbow by playing a few rounds of Sticks and Stones, or by just being on the contraband tiers, or by gaining more XP? They're in the loot boxes for a reason. Then there's Gun Game. The Blops 4 version of that has been updated to give to make its final weapon be the ballistic knife. Again, that is teasing players an item that they can only get in the loot boxes. And it's honestly sickening how badly they're handling these loot boxes and how clearly they're playing on nostalgia. And speaking of that, well, if you pre-order the next Call of Duty game, which is, it's Call of Duty Modern Warfare, it seems to be a retelling of Modern Warfare, you get to play that game's incarnation of Modern Warfare's Captain Price in Blackout. That's another example of them nostalgia baiting people. And this is actually not where things end. A number of new weapons have been data mined, including a classic M16, so it's pretty likely that will be in our next loot box update. And there is even the potential for them to do something that's a bit more directly pay to win here. So, Mastercraft weapons are fancy model redesigns of existing guns that typically come with a special camo that evolves during a match. They're actually pretty cool as a cosmetic, but they've added a Mastercraft version of a gun that was added to the game's contraband track in January, but now has went into the reserves, i.e. the loot boxes. Now, Mastercraft weapons sometimes appear for direct sale in the game's direct purchase cosmetic shop. But the thing is, if you purchase a Mastercraft weapon but don't own the base version of that weapon, then purchasing the Mastercraft will unlock the base version of the weapon, meaning that they do now have a way to directly sell the loot box weapons on their store. They haven't done it yet, and it's not direct, it is through the Mastercraft cosmetic versions as they happen to unlock the base weapon. And yeah, as I said, they've not done this yet, but keep an eye out and see if they do. But of course though, that's not it. Season Pass holders are also feeling rather hard done by. Remember, many of these people purchase that game's Season Pass expecting it to be similar to other Call of Duty games, where they just get a whole bunch of new content. They did not really know though the extent to which the rest of the game would turn into a cash-grabbing nightmare. So they're already in a situation where they've paid a lot of money for what should be a premium experience that actually feels decidedly cheap, because the game is always hounding you for cash. Well, that cheapness has got worse. First, a design variant of Reaper was added as a specialist. Now that sounds fine, but the Black Ops 3 version of Reaper was a Season Pass exclusive Blackout character, so that does make one of the unique perks of the Season Pass a little bit less unique. Then past that, pass holders got 3 new multiplayer maps and 1 new zombie mission. Well, one multiplayer map is a remake of a Blops 1 map. Treyarch also recently added another remake of a Blops map to the game for free, so seeing a remake be part of the premium pass does feel quite cheap. Then another one of the maps is based off an existing Black Ops 3 tile set, and then the final map is a museum that features slices of zombie assets from across the series. So yes, all 3 new maps heavily reuse content, as does the zombie mission, which is set in Nuketown. Okay, it's a version of Nuketown that they say is 400% larger, but we already know that a larger version of Nuketown exists in Blackout. So again, it's just blatant asset reuse. Now, a little bit of that is fine, it is just smart development, but you've got to do that reasonably. Right now, I think this is just out of line with what people would expect from a premium season pass. And when you think about the state of Treyarch and Call of Duty, it all makes sense. Development of Call of Duty 2020 hit a major snag, resulting in Sledgehammer and Raven being pulled from the project, well, pulled from leadership of the project, they're still working support, and then Treyarch taking up the lead. Now note that Treyarch as a studio went through extreme crunch on Black Ops 3 and 4, with both games facing major design overhauls mid-development. I mean, Blackout was made in 9 months flat. They are now coming off the back of all of that crunch into picking up COD 2020 very late in the day. So with this happening, I suppose it makes sense that the art teams are being pulled off maintaining the current game as much and onto developing the next one because of that change in the development timelines, and that doesn't seem to be a great thing for consumers. So what do we see overall here? Well, we see that Activision are clearly experimenting with the loot boxes. They are putting things in those loot boxes that people have a lot of emotional attachment to, at least people who've been loyal to the Black Ops series, and they've even been doubling down on that through the addition of the Sticks and Stones game mode being introduced as a time-limited event that ties into the rewards of the loot boxes, because that's the only other way you can use that crossbow. They are then padding out their loot boxes even more with junk items, and they have a rubbish anti-dupe system. It's a really grim picture. Activision are clearly running their experiments. They're trying to dial in the specific execution of these microtransactions that performs best, and that really does make me worried for the future of the franchise, especially now as we are seeing weapons being unlocked in loot crates, in what, technically speaking, is an arena shooter. It really is wild. So there you go, it's a pretty darn grim picture. I think that raising awareness of this, though, is very important. I know that the majority of the people who watch this channel don't play Call of Duty, and I probably, I hop into every Call of Duty most of the time just to see what's going on. Of course, COD 4, COD 2 especially, very big parts of growing up. So, I do pay attention to that, but the reason why I bring it up to this broader audience that I know is not the core Call of Duty audience is because this is happening more and more across more different games. I think it's vital that gaming consumers become aware of these patterns and what they're trying to smuggle in, what they're trying to do. As I said at the top of this video, these new updates are essentially all Trojan horses. It's a pretty grim picture. I'd love to know what you think down below, especially if you're a Black Ops player, and just what your experience has been sticking to this game. I'd love to hear, so let me know. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.